You're watching Every Day's a Saturday, USMC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Brian. Boom. What's going on, friends and family? Welcome to another great day, another great interview. Super excited for my next guest because he's a Marine. So I get a little excited for my fellow Marines. You know, some of us love crayons, some of us like to draw with them, some of us just throw them at people, what have you. We embrace the crayon thing sometimes, and some of us don't, but anyhow, before we get on there, guys, just recently we've been added. I know I've been probably saying this a little bit, but we're going to say it again. We've recently been added to Reese Across America. And for all of you that are just listening on the audio side, you can check them out at reaseacrossamerica.org/radio. And that shows on Saturdays, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, I believe I'm correct on that. It's either that or 9. So anyhow, go check them out. Go give them a follow. But let's not let our next guest keep going, waiting back there any longer. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Marine Corps. Got a very interesting story. Started on the enlisted side, became an officer. So I am super intrigued to hear about how that happened and how that transition worked for him because, there's always that thing between enlisted and officer. So he joined the dark side. So I'm super interested in hearing about that. He also has a book out there that he's going to be talking about, and I'm interested to hear about his book and how it may help our fellow brothers and sisters out there. But let's not keep him waiting any longer. We got Mr. Jason West. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man. Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me on, man. Excited.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. And now's the opportunity, man, for you to kind of give us the spiel about Jason West. Let us know all the things that you want us to know. And maybe there's some things that you don't want us to know. You can let us know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, man, the floor is all yours.
You never know. You never know. So, yeah, man, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I think I'm going to start what I'm doing right now. And then we'll just work backwards and we can kind of dissect whatever we need to dissect. So what I'm doing now is I'm the founder of a management consulting firm with the name Officers Eat Last. And myself and my partner, Jim Steyerwalt, who we can dig into Jim later in the podcast if we want. But what we do is we partner with business owners to help them create purpose-driven businesses. And how we do that is through aligning their key stakeholders. So obviously their leaders, their employees, and alignment on their customers in terms of scaling growth. So there's a lot of business owners out there that have achieved a level of success, but many times they're like, how can I get to the next level? And some of that can be dysfunction amongst the senior leaders or whatever, or lack of alignment, things of that nature. So that is what I'm involved in now. But as we back up in terms of how did that happen and how did I get to that point, it was a bedrock of my experiences from the Marine Corps. So like you said, I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, infantry officer. I was in combat environments in Kosovo, Fallujah, Iraq, Afghanistan. And so it was those experiences that gave me kind of a bedrock in leadership, gave me a bedrock in how to create plans, detailed plans. In the Marines, we call it an operation order, and how to create teams and hopefully maintain alignment through whatever types of operations that you may be executing. So I've been fortunate to have kind of like multiple career hats over my lifespan, which was started college. So that was a career hat. And while I was in college for whatever reason, I decided to leave college and join the Marine Corps. So that was my enlisted time. So I joined the Marine Corps, and you're going to laugh when you hear me say this. So I was an enlisted Marine, And I go and I take the ASVAB test and everything else. And all I knew is I wanted to be a Marine. Like I didn't know anything else.
Right.
And on the reserve side, they have to assign you an MOS. And so the recruiter was like, you scored high enough, you're going to be a 3043.
Oh, no way. Yeah. I know what a 3043 is, being a 3051.
Yeah. So,
Well,
and I know our audience doesn't a lot of the audience doesn't know,
yeah.
but the Marine Corps assigns MOSs. It's a 4-digit number. So 3043 is supply admin. And I didn't know the difference or anything. It was like, okay, whatever, you know, I'm just wanted to be a Marine. So what I mean by the 2 career hats is I go to Parris Island. I go through all of my training. I MCT at Camp Geiger. I go to Camp Johnson, all of that. And then I go back and I joined my reserve unit, which was out of Bessemer, Alabama. It was actually an artillery unit. And then I go back to college. And so the 2 career hats is I'm a Marine, and then I'm a college kid, and I'm doing college kid stuff. And so I was getting a degree in finance, and I was like, well, I see my future as a finance guy. I'm gonna be a finance guy. And so when this is all in the 90s, so it's like we weren't at war all over the place or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of like you're just living your life.
It was just like a mid 90s type or early.
Yeah. So I joined the Marine Corps in December 1992, and so then I go back to college. All this.
So Desert Storm is probably just
right
on the downside of things, right?
That's right. Okay. Exactly. That's right. Okay. Exactly. So like my age group, like I wasn't out of high school when, you know, the whole thing, and as we know from a ground war standpoint, it was only 100 hours anyways. Right. So so there was none of that. But anyways, when I graduated college, I took a job with a bank in New Orleans. And my commitment to the Marine Corps was a 3x5 contract. And your audience may or may not, you know, they probably don't know, but it's like I had 3 years that I needed to serve in the reserves. And then there's going to be 5 years that I was going to be in the inactive reserve roles, the IRR. And so I go to work for this bank. And so that's that hat. I got this, you know, banker hat on.
It's usually a 2 and a 4, right? So
well, no, they want you to sign up for 6.
Yeah.
They want you to do a 6x2.
So you're schooling, huh?
Yeah. If you do 6x2, you get some money. But fortunately, I did not, I didn't need the money for school, you know, fortunately. And so I was like, well, I'll just do 3x5. So I go down and work at the bank. And then so I got this hat on as a banker guy, but having already been a Marine, so this is 1996, 1997, I felt like, well, I'm a young guy and I'm working this bank and I'm like this little analyst guy or whatever. It just didn't fit with like who, you know, what I wanted to do as a young person. And so I called the officer selection officer in Tuscaloosa, and he had tried to recruit me to be an officer while I was a student. Not because I was like anything special. He's just doing his job. He's like, hey man, why don't you become an officer? And so when I called him and told him like, hey, I don't like working this bank, you know, can you get me a slot? He was like, all right, well, you know, start filling the paperwork out. And fortunately he was able to get me a slot. And I went in to officer candidate school as a candidate in the summer of 1997. So, but my full intention was to do one tour and get out. But as my first tour was ending, I met a woman who eventually became my wife. And, you know, like those of us who are Marines, it means a lot to us. And I was kind of like, I just can't, you know, I should do one more tour. I should do one more tour so that if we end up being married for 50 years or whatever, she doesn't just say like, when I was in the Marine Corps and when I was in the, you know, cause it's like, so I decided to do another tour. And I accept orders up to Quantico, Virginia, and I was on staff at Officer Candidate School. So now I'm an instructor up there at Officer Candidate School. And while I was there is when September 11th happened. And like a lot of Marines, once that went down, I told my wife, I was like, I need to do another tour because, I'm pissed like everybody else and I want to be involved in whatever's going to go down. And she was like, okay, so do that, get involved in those activities, which we can delve into later. And, at that point, I was around 10 years. I'd been married for 4 or 5 years, and had 3 kids. And so I was talking with my wife and I was like, I always said I was going to get out, and we're at the 10-year mark. So it's kind of like you're either a career guy and you keep going,
Right.
or you get out. And so I decided to get out. And since I had been in the reserves prior to, when I left active duty, for me, I was kind of like, whatever, I don't mind being a reserve guy. So I went over to the reserve side as an officer, and then spent the remainder of my time as a reserve officer. And then that's where the kind of totality of 26 years comes from. And so,
and then you know what? Yeah. You went reserve when the reserve units became super active, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure you thought you were going to be a reservist,
yeah.
But then, unless you weren't one of those reserve units, it was. I mean, I know a lot of guys that reserve units probably spend a lot more time than some of the units that are active.
Yeah, no, totally. That's exactly right. Is obviously it wasn't the Marine Corps reserve experience in Vietnam where they did not send any reserves at all. Is
right.
The last 20 plus years of war is the Marine Corps, and the Army have used reserves consistently. They still do. Is obviously there's not as much combat that we're involved in right now, but and I think it's a good thing, quite frankly, is the reserves are very much involved in current operations, all over the globe. But I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 as a Marine major. So my primary MOS is infantry officer, and I obtained the additional MOS of civil affairs. So I actually deployed with a civil affairs team and attached to an active duty infantry unit, and that was a very unique experience that we can delve into. So anyway, so having said all of that, is this eclectic career, and what I mean by the 2 hats is I've had this hat of being a Marine, and then I've had a hat of being in business. And so I left active duty in 2006. And so whenever you leave active duty in the reserve, obviously you got to go do something in order to make money. And so I've been in multiple sales roles from 2006 to now. I've been in some operations roles. I started a company. The first company I started, after about 4 years, I was able to sell that company. And then it was after that point that in my head, I was kind of like, well, I feel like I know a thing or two on leadership. And then that's where the book came from. Is I sat down and I was kind of like, do I have a leadership book in me? And kind of just got focused on trying to do that. And so that's where leadership development, a blueprint for building your leadership foundation, came from, which is targeted towards individual contributors in business. So like somebody, there's the book. Thank you so much. So somebody who is like they're a college grad, and they're doing whatever for some business and nobody works for them. And they've been doing that for 2, 3, whatever number of years. And they're kind of like, you know what? I'd really like to be promoted to manager, where I have 4 people working for me, or 6 or 8 or whatever. So that's where my head was on that book. And what I did is I used the lens of the way the Marine Corps develops infantry officers. So there's a method and everything else on the development of infantry officers. And there's a lot of things that are kind of very unique about it, because, it's essentially almost a year or a little over a year when a Marine infantry officer, like all their training and everything else, before they get to their first unit. And so when they get there, they're a second lieutenant. And per the TO, they have like 45, 44, 42 Marines who work for them. Like that's their first job as a leader. And so what we see in the private sector, since there's so many small companies, like, a huge number of companies do not even have 50 employees. A huge number of companies don't have 40, they don't have 20, whatever. And then also anybody who is becoming a manager / supervisor for the first time, normally they only have like 5 people working for them. So that's kind of where my head was, is it's like, okay, what are these tools? What are all these things that could help an individual, and what would be a guidebook for them? So that book is built where somebody can, just read it and digest it and hopefully start implementing those things. It also can be read by somebody who is a higher level manager, and they could use the book as a guide with their people that they're trying to develop. Because what obviously happens on the Marine side is the second lieutenant hopefully does not fail, and they don't fail for a number of different reasons. One of those is they're partnered with a staff sergeant, right? They're partnered with a staff sergeant who probably has been in 6 years, 8 years or whatever. And even though there's a lot of jokes and it's a lot of fun to mess around with the second lieutenant, is the staff sergeant doesn't want them to fail. And then you have a gunnery sergeant who doesn't want them to fail. You have a first sergeant who doesn't want them to fail. You got a company commander, an XO. You have all these people built around who actually, yes, it's fun to make jokes as second lieutenants, but ultimately we need the team to succeed. And what eventually happens anyways is, if everything goes right, the second lieutenant does not fail in a miserable way, and they get promoted to first lieutenant, they get promoted to captain, they get promoted to major, like they become the next lieutenant colonels, and generals. And so we have this kind of glide path for development, even though we know young people make a lot of mistakes. So that's kind of where my head was on that book. But let me pause there, because I think that, that was obviously a lot to kind of get us to where we are right now.
No, yeah, man. So we'll go way back a little bit, not way back, but enough. Now making that decision, right? Like, I mean, I know, how long were you enlisted before you actually decided to go into the officer side?
Yeah. So 1992, went to Parris Island, and then in 1997, the early part of 1997, so like January, February, March, is sometime in there, is I was like, you know what? If I could be a Marine officer, I'd like to do it. Let me see if I can. So I already had a college degree.
Sure.
And so the Marine Corps has multiple different paths for commissioning. And I'm not saying that they're not all competitive, because they kind of are. But the Marine Corps, funny enough, the Marine Corps would rather not take individuals that already have their college degree. They would rather take individuals and get them into the program and get them into the whole thing earlier in their college career. And so essentially the Marine Corps leaves open you already have a college degree to kind of cover recruiting gaps and things of that nature. And so whenever I put my package in and everything else, it did not get accepted right away. Basically, I was on the alternate list, and I was kind of like, come on, man.
And
Come
you're
on.
still a 30-43 during this whole part?
Yeah. Well, so like I wasn't a drilling reservist anymore,
Right.
because my last drill was December 1995. And I graduated from college in May 1996. So it's like I was in the IRR. I wasn't drilling. I wasn't doing anything. But I know this, having been a Marine, is kind of the physical fitness and just kind of being in shape or whatever stays with us most of the time. So I was still physically fit. I'm not saying that once I decided to go become an officer, I didn't start like hammering like a lot harder, because I did, but I wasn't, I had not turned into, a slob that just eats Cheetos and drinks Mountain Dew all day.
Well, definitely not, because I mean, you ended up having to go through OCS, right? I mean, and so how is OCS in comparison to boot camp? Similar, different? I mean, and maybe even a little bit harder. I mean,
no, it's way different. Yeah, no, it's way different. And I think I have a unique perspective, because once I went, I go to officer candidate school. And then you may know this is the all Marine officers go to a 6-month school at Quantico. So Officer Candidate School is on one side. It's on the east side of I-95, right on the Potomac River. And then on the west side of I-95 is where the basic officer course is, TBS, the basic school. And so all Marine officers go to that school. You know, it doesn't matter if they're going to be a lawyer, a pilot, infantry, supply. It doesn't matter. They all go to that school for 6 months. And the Marine Corps says that it is creating a basic rifle platoon commander. So if they had to guard a base, you know, be in charge of Marines guarding Camp Leatherneck or Camp Fallujah or whatever, then they would have some level of skill in order to do that. And it's at that school where, if you're a ground contract, you compete for your MOS. So the only guaranteed contracts for the Marine Corps, or at least historically, is lawyer. So they'll guarantee you lawyer. Like if you're already a lawyer, there's like you're guaranteed. Aviation, not the frame, not the airframe, just you are an aviation contract, and then ground. So all the ground guys compete for whatever MOS that they're going to end up with. And so so you go to that school, and then you get assigned your MOS through the.
So when you go in, you have no clue as an officer what your MOS is going to be. They assign
Correct.
it. They assign it at the school. I mean,
Yes.
Damn.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happens is, and you're not going to be surprised by this, is every lieutenant, like, so you have written test, you have physical fitness test, you have, and it's not just the PFT, like there are other physical fitness events that you're tested on. You're tested on all kind of stuff. And then, so every grade goes in, and then you're racked and stacked against your peers. So it's like there is a number one lieutenant. And if there are 300 lieutenants in the company, there is a number 300, like straight up, there is the last guy or gal. So, and again, I know you're not going to be surprised by this. And the Marine Corps they're not shy about it. It's like,
no, they surely are, man. I mean, they don't care. Here's
it's
a pacifier if you need it, or here's a straw to suck it up.
Yeah, yeah. And so what ends up happening is, in any particular class, is headquarters Marine Corps will say, okay, you have 300 lieutenants. This is the 6 months that you have, and it will say you can have 30. You will have 30 infantry officers from the 300. You will have 40 logistics officers. You will have, when we had tanks, be like, you can have 3 tank officers, on and on. You will have this many artillery officers, every single MOS. And so what ends up happening is, while you're there, is if you wanted to be infantry, which I did, is you're competing for that slot. So you could have 300 lieutenants, and they all do not want infantry. I don't care what anybody tells you. They don't. Now, a lot may. So say, like, out of the 300, maybe 80 want infantry. You don't have 30 slots. So that's kind of how it goes down. And hopefully the Marine Corps does a good job of, picking some of the best people for it. But whatever. I mean, I don't want to.
I imagine they're looking at your strength and weaknesses and all that throughout time, right? I mean, and measuring you up, and you would think they would put you in the best fit in terms of where you're. I guess you seem like you're the strong part.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so, and I know that your question started with the compare contrast to Parris Island Boot Camp and Officer Candidate School. So I say all of that to kind of level set and set the deck. Is I became an infantry officer. I go down to Camp Lejeune. I joined Echo 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines. I was a rifle platoon commander. And so I did my tour. I ended up being a weapons platoon commander, EXO, company commander, all this stuff. We did 24th MEU, did the med float, all that stuff, went into Kosovo.
It's like armory. Is that armory?
Say again?
You guys are like an armory, or is that what you guys do, or is it more?
No, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines. That's just a straight laced.
Yeah, 2-6. Okay, right.
Yeah, 2-6. Yeah, straight laced infantry inside 6th Marine Regiment. You may remember this, like 6th Marines and 5th Marines get to wear the French fourragère if you remember the unit. So it's, really cool stuff going back to World War One. But when I leave my first tour and I go to my second tour, is I was on staff at Officer Candidate School. And so while I was at Officer Candidate School, I was a platoon commander for 1 cycle, and then I was an executive officer for 5 cycles. So for me, I basically went through Officer Candidate School, like the course, 7 times.
So you're like a drill instructor, but for the OCS side, right?
Well,
I mean, because even drill instructors got to go through the iteration of boot camp. I think it's 9 times. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean,
so obviously officers are not drill instructors. The drill instructors work for they work for us.
Yeah.
In the normal land of like the way the Marine Corps works. So there's various things that are unique about Officer Candidate School. One is, per policy, is a drill instructor cannot be at Officer Candidate School unless they have done a tour at Parris Island or San Diego, because what the Marine Corps wants is seasoned drill instructors. They don't want brand new drill instructors.
Right.
So what you see at Officer Candidate School is the majority of drill instructors are staff sergeants or gunnery sergeants. And the real difference is the Marine Corps uses boot camp to create a basically trained Marine. So at the end, the Marine Corps is trying to create a basically trained Marine. Right. So that's why they take them to swim qual. That's why you go to the rifle range. That's why you have some level of martial arts.
And even MCT. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Why you learn drill, all these things. So if you graduate a Marine Corps recruit company at Parris Island or San Diego, and somebody comes over and grabs one of the Marines and says like, "Hey, Marine, there's an M16 right there. Take it apart, put it back together, whatever." And let's say like they couldn't do it, then we failed. Like we failed as a service because of what we're trying to do. So we had a joke at Officer Candidate School because that's not what we're doing. Officer Candidate School is not about creating a basically trained officer, because the first set of orders that an officer has is to go to the basic officer course for 6 months. That's where you create the basically trained officer. So at Officer Candidate School, they do not do swim qual. There's no swim qual. They do not go to the rifle range. So the only thing
is it more like a knowledge based?
No, well, what it is,
doing more knowledge, or
what it is it's a school that is screening for leadership potential, leadership abilities. So there is an academic piece, there's a physical fitness piece, and there's a leadership piece. So it doesn't mean that that they have to be the best leader ever, but they are going to be put in leadership positions, and there's going to be training and things of this nature, and they are going to be assessed on their ability in those positions. So what you have at Parris Island is you have, all the recruits are online and they're told to grab their sea bag and they dump it out, and the drill instructors are like, "Why did you dump the sea bag out? Pick this up." And they're creating all this chaos and everything else for each recruit. And then they're like, "Grab your green sock." And if somebody doesn't grab their green sock fast enough, they tear them up, or whatever. So what you have at Officer Candidate School is you have all of that. That's it. That's the normal stuff. But as you go through Officer Candidate School, is we assign billets to the candidates. And so what they do is they have red velvet. Okay. So they have red velvet, and we assign a candidate, and they're a company commander. So they put captain's bars. We tell one of them, "You're the first sergeant." He puts red velvet. He puts the first sergeant on there. We put all these billets for the company. So the level of difference is that we are assigning task to run a company to candidates. And as you might expect, they jack it up all the time. So
by design.
Yeah, exactly, by design. So what you have is you have like a candidate first sergeant, and you have one of the drill instructors saying, "Hey, candidate first sergeant, how many candidates are on deck right now?" And the first sergeant's like, 300 candidates, sir. And the drill instructors knows that like 2 of them are at sick call or whatever,
Yeah, right.
And they'll be like, "Oh, really? So you have all 300?" And the candidate be like, candidate first are like, "Yes, yes, sir. Yes, drill instructor." And then they just tear their butt up. It's like, "What about Johnson? He's just dead to you. Are you writing a letter to his mom?" And just ripping them. I mean, just freaking tearing their little butt apart. And so, anyways, I mean, it's a method to create like a lot of chaos. Like it creates a lot of chaos. And then what is being evaluated, unfortunately for the candidates, is they got to keep their composure. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They got to keep their composure. And I know you remember these, right? You remember these little books or whatever? These little.
I got a monster.
Yeah, exactly.
All the knowledge in here, man.
That's right. So the candidates will have these little books, and they'll be sitting there, writing in their books and stuff like that. It's like,
you guys got the ones for the notes, huh?
Yeah.
Line.
So
I know.
They stayed on this line. It'll be like,
Judy Hub
what are you going to do about Johnson? He's a sick call. And it's just like it's just pulling this thread, and obviously as an instructor, sometimes it's kind of a little bit funny to be watching it. But if you're a candidate, which I was as well, it's not funny. It is not funny. But what goes on, like those are the main differences. Is like Marine Corps boot camp is the goal for the Marine Corps is to create a basically trained Marine. Whereas at Officer Candidate School, it's an evaluation / assessment / screening to determine abilities, like their ability. And so the physical fitness standards are higher for officer candidates than they are for any Marine, any American that just goes to Parris Island. Like I was the XO for the ROTC company 4 different times. And whenever they get there within the first week, they take a PFT. And so we could have 300 candidates take the PFT, and the slowest candidate would be like 20 minutes and 30 seconds. Like that's the absolute last person who runs across out of 300. And the first one would be like 14 minutes and 15 seconds. So what you would have is you got 300 candidates, and you would have maybe like 120 or 150 have a 300 PFT. Like that's the level of physical fitness that you would have. So wow. It's way up there.
Yeah, and you know what? You guys gotta look good in that uniform, man. Shoot. And you guys are holding others to standards, Shoot, man.
Yeah.
Gotta lock in your standards. Well, I guess one more quick question is how is that, transitioning and becoming more into the, now you're on the grunt side of things,
Yeah.
You'd been on the other side. Now you're more on that grunt side. Did that mindset change a lot?
Well, I think so. I think so. Cause like what happens is, and I'm just speaking, from my personal experience. So I go to Parris Island, and Marine Combat Training at Camp Geiger, and I get trained as a supply guy, and then I go join this artillery unit. So we're just a product of whatever our experiences are. So when you're a PFC and you join the unit, a PFC I think only knows to stay away from the first sergeant, right? Unless
someone's like, go get the ID10T form, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're a PFC, you think the first sergeant is like really, really old, but he may only be like 35, right. He may be 36, but like when you're a PFC, you're kind of like, gosh, he's so old, man. I can't even believe
you're
it.
Like that little kid, at first.
Yeah. It's like, how can he even be that old and walk around?
Salty.
And so it's like you are just a product of the experiences that are around you. So when you're a PFC and a Lance Corporal, and there's a sergeant or staff sergeant, you're kind of like, yes, sergeant, no staff sergeant, and stuff like that or whatever. And they're the ones controlling the relationships. And And you don't have any situational awareness. Like, you don't understand what's going on at drill. You don't know why you're riding down a road somewhere. You just like, there's nothing, and unless it's explained to you. And so that's kind of your experience. So what the rank I got to was corporal. So I wasn't in any kind of like high level stuff as an enlisted guy. I never got pulled into any high level meetings or anything like that. So
you're
it's
kind of like in the sandwich as a corporal, you know what I mean? You still have a layer that could just chew your ass out, that sergeant and staff sergeant. And then you got all those guys below you that just get you in trouble.
Yep, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
That shit sandwich, man.
So for me is, I mean, I almost can't even explain. I mean, I guess it's just an experience that I wanted to have, like as a young person, meaning, you know, becoming a Marine officer. And I fully intended to to get out after my first tour. Like, I was just going to be like, I'm going to go do this tour, and then I'm going to go work in a bank. I mean, literally, like, that's where my head was. I was like, I'm going to go have this cool experience, whatever, you know, whatever. And because again, this was 1997, so it's like we weren't at war or anything. We just like go have a cool experience and then go back to a bank or whatever the hell. And so for me, I just embraced the path that the Marine Corps had laid out. So when I went to officer candidate school and when I started the basic officer course, if somebody would have asked me early on, if they would have said like, hey, what MOS are you going to be? You know, what are you trying to compete for? Is I had been in an artillery unit. And so I would say, I want to be an artillery officer. Because I mean, that's what I knew. You know, like, you know, yes, my MOS was supply, but I was in an artillery unit. I was like, it's kind of cool. You know, we had the self-propelled howitzers when I joined the unit. So like, we're driving around, it feels like you're in a tank, even though it's not a tank. And then we transitioned to the howitzers where you pull them behind a trailer. So anyways, so that was my experience. And then as the weeks went by at the basic officer course, it was the first time that I realized that the Marine Corps is ran by infantry officers, like the guys that, you know, and I'm not saying that the aviation is not important. They're very, very important. They do way cool stuff. Logistics guys, everybody's doing cool stuff. But there's a lot of the heavy decision makers are the infantry guys. And so that I gravitated towards that and kind of had a mind switch of, you know what, I think that's the experience I want. I want to have that experience. So that's kind of how that unfolded, you know, for me.
Nice. Well, you know what? We're about that point where we got to take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll kind of, you know, switch things up a little bit, talk about you getting out of the Marine Corps, you know, how that looks for you. You know, a lot of times, you know, some of the struggle now, and you have a different experience, right? Being in the reserves, you know, you get to kind of be at home and you get the best of both worlds, right? So we'll kind of talk about how that transition is when we come right back. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Sick Call with Doc, a podcast dedicated to eradicating veteran suicide. With 22 veterans lost every day, we believe that's 22 too many. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, heartfelt conversations, and a community that cares. Because no matter what, you are not alone. We were there for you then, and we're here for you now. Follow, like, and share our mission. Together, we can make a difference. Inspiring hope, saving lives.
American made, veteran owned, we are Doc Goodbeard. It's more than just looking good. When it comes to your beard, we believe you can have it all. Thoughtfully designed, unique fragrances, and affordable prices. We strive to provide a line of uniquely scented balms and oils that you won't find in other products. Come on, rock with Doc, and remember, it's all about the beard, man. So what do you say? Let's take that average beard and make it badass. Go to docbeard.com.
All right, Mr. West, we're going to go ahead and now switch it up. Like I said, when you got out of the Marine Corps, what did that life look like for you, man? And kind of talk us, now we'll get a little bit more into what you got going on today, your book and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I left the Marine Corps, resigned my active duty commission to a reserve commission. It was like August 2006, I guess. So in 2005, I had done a deployment to Fallujah, Iraq. So there was still, you're dealing with whatever those things are, and whether you realize whatever you're dealing with. My other combat environment had been Kosovo in 2000. And really it was junior varsity, like you read about. I'm not saying that there weren't individuals there that wanted to shoot at us and wanted to get in a fight, but nobody did. And I just think that, that's a reputational thing for the Marine Corps. Is most educated people around the globe do not want to fight with U.S. Marines, because it normally does not work out real well. And so
history says,
yeah, exactly. So if any of them are using their brains, they're like, don't shoot at them. Don't you do it.
The devil dogs are here.
Don't you do it. And so Fallujah, Iraq, those guys were excited about shooting at U.S. Marines and planning IDs and all the rest of the stuff. So leave active duty in August 2006. But I think, like a lot of guys, is you don't necessarily know what you're dealing with, how you're dealing with it. You're just kind of like, this is my life now, and I need to move on with my life. So my first role was in a sales role, and I had a couple of those sales roles, and one of them, I don't mind sharing on here, it's like whatever, is I was working for a company, and my boss, which in hindsight, he was a decent guy, but he didn't understand kind of some of the stuff that I had been dealing with, and nor did I. And his leadership style was kind of, I likened it to if you roll up a newspaper and you have like a pet tiger, and you walk over to the pet tiger and you just hit it with the newspaper every once in a while. Pow, pow. So I think a lot of tigers would be like, what is this guy doing? Like, what is this about? And then the tiger might let the human do it a few more times. You just go over there, he just hits him. But eventually the tiger is going to be like, you're done training, bro.
Yeah.
And so the guy that I worked for, I mean, that's what it felt like. It felt like he had a rolled up newspaper and he's just hit me with it. And one day, man, I lost my shit, man. I freaking lost.
You were Marine on him, huh?
I lost it. I mean, I'm not going to use some of the words that I used, but it was not good. It was not good at all. I mean, I told him I was going to beat his bleep. I was going to do, just terrible, terrible stuff to this guy. And it was
like his birth child. I mean,
it was like an out of body experience. And so like I'm having this whole out of body experience, and good on him. I mean, he kind of just sat there, because I think he was in what is happening.
He was probably like, oh, I poked too hard.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was probably like a surreal moment for him, which is fair. And then I kind of like come back into my body, and then my brain starts working again. And I was in my head, I'm kind of like, I am getting fired like immediately. and then also in my head is like, dude is going to call 911. So I'm not just going to get fired. Dude's going to call 911, and then I'm going to be like over a cop car with handcuffs. And so when I came back,
see, Jason, that's why I'm 100% unemployable, bro.
Yeah. When I came back, I was like, hey man, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I've been sick, which I literally had been sick. I think that was part of it, is I had been sick. I was just having, a hard time kind of like controlling my emotions and stuff. And so I cycled back, and then he's like, okay, all right, man, I got it. It's no problem. We're going to work through this. And so we basically ended, that day together. And then I go home and I tell my wife, and I was like, I think they're firing me. And she's like, what happened? Explain. And so the next day he ended up talking to his boss and they didn't fire me. But by that point, I just felt like, man, whatever cards I had and whatever, was going to happen, I've given it all away. I mean, now like any little thing that I do, any little mistake, anything that happens, Duke can just be like, you're fired. And so, what I did is I called some of my buddies and kind of used my Marine network, and the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab was looking for individuals to come on orders and be involved in some of the things that they had going on. And so I said, hey man, can you get me involved in that? And then, so that was the next thing that I went and did was, it was called the Improvised Explosive Device Training Officer for the Counter IED Working Group, Global War on Terror. It was a whole thing, but it was cool work. It was fun to be involved.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I went and did that for a year and then bounced back out to the private sector. And then coming into 2010, 2011 is I volunteered to become a civil affairs officer and deploy to Afghanistan. And then after I did that, bounced back out to the private sector and then finished my time actually at the Marine Corps Civil Military Operations School in Quantico as an instructor there. So that was I did my last 4 years there. And again, like, this is a whole kind of being in sales, doing active duty, doing a deployment, starting a company, selling a company, like all of these things are kind of like, that's why I say it's two hats. Like I had the Marine Corps hat and then I'd have private sector hat and, that type of thing.
Nice. Well, I imagine, it's hard to remove the Marines.
Yeah.
We all can get out of the Marine Corps, but it's really hard to remove the Marine from all of us. Right. And I think a lot of us, when we go from the Marine Corps and then we go into the civilian world, we have a set of expectations a little bit, and it really doesn't meet our expectations. I'm pretty sure most of the time.
Yeah.
When we go out, we're just like, whoa, this is not exactly what I thought it was. Right.
No, definitely.
And because I remember going and started work myself. It's funny. I feel like we have a lot of similarities in terms of where our Marine Corps career kind of, obviously you went officer and stayed in and stuff, but just to the point of, you didn't know, you just wanted to be a Marine. You didn't know what you wanted to get into. You end up with supply. Same here. I went in kind of with like an open contract, like a goofball, and then I luckily I was a 3051. So he's a 3043. He's on the admin side. They call me the box kicker of things, right, where I'm on the warehouse side doing all the pulling all the orders that they're ordering or putting them away, all those kind of things. But now, in terms of your book, what actually got you to decide, hey, I'm ready to write a book? There's a lot of work that goes into writing a book and a lot of thought, and especially if you wanted to go out and be something, right? So what landed you there in terms of getting a book going?
Yeah. So the origin of it was my time at Officer Candidate School on staff. So I'm sure this, the audience may or may not know this, but at Parris Island and at San Diego, they're basically running recruits all year long, right? They're running recruits all year long. But at Officer Candidate School is the majority of candidates are trained in the summer, and there's only one 10-week course in the fall, and there's a 10-week course like January to March type of thing. And so what that means is there's breaks and there's no candidates there. And so I don't know who was involved in it, but Wharton Business School wanted to bring MBA students down to Quantico, and they wanted them to have like a 48-hour to 72-hour experience. And so, and I know there had been some Marines who were MBA students and things of that nature. That's kind of like part of it. But I was involved when I was an instructor and the Wharton MBA students coming down, and they did a lot of the legwork on like what they wanted. And they wanted specific things. So like they came up on buses and they wanted the drill instructors to get on the bus and like treat them like they were recruits. So we put that as part of it. They stayed in the officer candidate school barracks. There was all these things. We did certain things out in the field, all the rest of it. So leadership reaction course. And so the Wharton students, as a requirement by the Wharton Business School, they basically wrote like lessons learned / after action report, and they would share it with us. And I remember reading those reports, and these Wharton Business School students would, these are like Wall Street investment bankers. These are people that have been in like really, really high level leadership positions, IBM, GE. I mean, you can list the names of the companies, and they're going to get an MBA, and they would write in there, I learned more about leadership in the last, 72 hours than I did working 7 years of Wall Street. Like it was that level of stuff.
Wow.
So for me, I was kind of like, that was the genesis of, I want to write a leadership book one day. I'm like, well, if it's that beneficial, then maybe there's something to this. And that's kind of like where my head was. And then from a target audience standpoint I was like, okay, well, let me go after individual contributors, people who are just doing the work, doing the job, that type of thing, and give them a blueprint, a guide path to becoming a better leader. So that's kind of where my head was.
Nice. Now, do you have plans on doing other books, or was this kind of like a one and done?
Well, so, like anything, it's kind of like your podcast is, you have to work on the promotion side. So clearly, if the old method would be to go on the Oprah Winfrey show, right? So if
Right.
she's not as popular as she used to be,
Sure.
but when she was like at the
her
height
prime
of her popularity, and you went on there and Oprah says, Jason West, everybody should buy his book. Then you know how many people are going to buy the book? I mean, like it's going to be tons. It's going to be out of control. And so I'm not saying I was straight up naive when I wrote the book, but I did feel like that it hits a niche. I feel like there are pains there in the private sector in order to become a good manager and everything else. So I do feel like that it's a good product, all the rest of it. But where I was naive, I think, is on the promotion and marketing side of the book. And essentially like the level of effort and the level of energy in order to, keep getting it out there. So it's for sale on Amazon. And I have sold copies in, 20, 30 different countries around the globe. I've sold,
Nice.
Copies in the United States and Canada, and on and on and on. But it hasn't, there's no seam that's been hit. And I'm sure you can feel that as well, being a podcast host and producing a podcast is how can you keep extending your reach, for you a little bit from an entertainment standpoint, and then at the same time, helpfulness to others and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, the thought of passive income streams, I mean, it's anything but passive income streams, because if you are not actively promoting and actively marketing, then you're not going to get sales. So
yeah, and you got to be careful for paying people to do those type of services as well, because sometimes they'll tell you and promise you the world, which you may see the results just by the stats, but where you don't see the results is there's no outcome from it, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the thing, organic growth is hard because it's a slow growth, right? But
yeah,
you want the organic growth because those are the ones that are coming back, and those are the ones talking about it, and they're kind of spreading it, So I totally get that world, man. And I know, especially in a world of copycats and all those things out there too. I've watched several of my author friends have struggles of people out there trying to dupe their book, trying to sell it for a lower cost or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have the prints to it. But you know,
I know it's
it's a
much
hard
weird.
world to travel in now, right? I mean, so I get it. Man, you know, I wish we had more time, you know, with being on Reach Across America. We definitely now have a time limit, which is 60 minutes. We're at about the 5-minute mark. I want to make sure that we cover anything maybe you forgot to mention. I want to mention before we head on out. I definitely appreciate you taking the time and talking about all the great things that you have so far, especially your experiences in the book. But is there anything out there that you maybe forgot and didn't talk about?
Yeah, no, well, I would just say that I don't have any regrets on writing the book and that path, because these things are dot connections, you know, kind of in our life. So the book, yes, my original thought was passive income. I don't know if have you ever heard of the platform Udemy?
Nah.
So
there's so many platforms.
No, I know.
That's the other thing. It's getting very saturated.
Yeah, exactly. So Udemy is a platform where instructors can teach things, and then obviously people around the globe can purchase those courses. So I have courses on there,
nice.
And then I have a YouTube channel. And so, like, what I mean by these dot connections is the book led to, you know, new efforts on who is it that I want to work with. How does this want to go down? And so all of those things led me to why I want to work with business owners, and which is what I'm doing now, and is what creates more joy for me. And nothing against helping someone who is 25 or 26 or 27 or whatever, and it's like, hey, I've been in the private sector for this number of years, and I want to get a job managing 5 people, and I think I'm going to get this promotion. Like, happy to give some pointers and things of that nature. But in terms of like how I want to spend my day and how I want to spend my time, I would rather be working with a business owner, because there's a bigger impact. So it's like, I can work with a business owner that has 50 employees. I can work with a business owner that has 150, 500, whatever. And it's a lot more complex. And I enjoy that. I enjoy kind of solving complex problems, building strategy, building plans, all that. I was fortunate in Fallujah, Iraq, to be involved in writing operations orders. So like, and you know, this on the Marine side is like, we actually write plans, we create plans, we execute, and we assess. We write plans, execute. Like so we're not just MBA guys. It's just like, we're literally writing plans. We're putting our lives on the line, other Marines' lives on the line, and we're executing. And unfortunately, the enemy gets a vote through those, and then you cycle back through again. So these are the types of things that I enjoy working with business owners on, is creating plans that we can execute. We execute on these plans, we assess these plans, we improve, start the cycle over again. And so I mentioned Jim Steyerwalt. He's a guy who's partnered with me. He's a prior IBM SAP executive, and we just get along really, really well. And he is he's a subject matter expert in marketing and sales. So we kind of gel together. So I'm a little leadership dude and strategy dude, and then you bring the sales piece together.
That's outstanding. Now, if anybody wanted to follow you, check you out, man, let us all know where we can find you and all that great stuff.
Yeah, so you can go to officerseatlast.com. That's the website. And then you can go to YouTube and type in Officers Eat Last. And I got a YouTube channel, so you can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn if somebody wants to go on LinkedIn and connect and that type of thing. So yeah.
Awesome, man. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this real quick. That way everybody can check it out. Let me see. All right, here's the website. Everybody go give it a check, and go look at the book. And
so you can buy an autographed copy if people are into that. You can buy an autographed copy. Click on the button that says Jason's book.
Jason Book. All right, here we go. Boom.
Yeah. So if somebody wants an autograph copy, which some people are into that, you know, so there you go. I'll mail you an autograph copy.
And there's where you guys can contact them. Don't be sending them nothing inappropriate.
That's right.
I should have said that. That probably just gave someone a thought. But hey, Jason, man, I appreciate you once again for coming on, taking the time, brother, to talk about your experiences and what you got going on. Everybody out there, go pick up yourself a copy of Leadership Development, a blueprint for building your leadership foundation by Jason M. West, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps.
One each.
Man, we thank you so much, brother, for all that you've done for our country and still continue to do for us. And thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. We'll see you, brother.
Take care.
All right, friends and family. Well, that goes ahead and wraps it up for another great one. We love to have, everyone come on to tell their stories. So if you have a great story out there, whether you deployed, didn't deploy, active duty, reservist, first responders, hey, come on. We'd love to hear from you. It's time to capture your guys' experiences, share it with the world. That way we can, you never know who could be learning from your message out there. If you guys ever want to contact me, you can always email me. Every day is a Saturday, 365 at yahoo.com. Also, you can subscribe to YouTube at EDAS. That's -USMC Veteran. And if you need anybody to talk to discreetly, maybe need some resources, there's always Crisis Lifeline, 988, press 1. And you know how we say on the show, don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, we'll see you guys.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.